So we manually deployed our project to Netlify, which is already great, of course, but we can do a lot better because we as web developers don't like to do things manually. So we like to automate things, and so that's where Git comes into play. So in this lecture, we're gonna install and set up Git on your computer and also open a free account at github.com. Now, if you're already familiar with Git and GitHub, then please mark this video and the next ones as completed, and then simply move on to the video where we actually deploy the project to Netlify using GitHub. Okay, so let's start by opening up the Git website. So that's going to be git scm, and so this is where we will download Git from. So Git is version control, as it says right here. So it is a software that runs on your computer, and you can basically use Git to save snapshots of your code over time. And then if you need, you can go back in time, like to older versions of your code, if you need to recover some mistake, for example. And that is really just a tip of the iceberg of everything that you can do with Git. But anyway, let's now download this software and then install it. So probably the easiest way of doing it is to click here on this installer for your operating system. So find this installer here somewhere on your page. So if you're on Windows, probably this looks different, but somewhere you will find a link for an installer and then simply download that and install it on your computer. Of course, I already have Git, and so I will wait for you to finish your installation. Okay, so I hope you successfully installed Git on your computer, and so let's now go back to our code and start a so-called repository. So let's clear the console here, and then make sure that in your terminal you are in the project folder. So here in this Forkify folder, and not inside of any of these child folders. So really the parent folder where your entire application lives. And so now we can write git init, hit enter, and so here you see we initialized an empty Git repository in this folder here. Then I get this warning here which asks me if I would like to add node modules to git ignore. And if you get the same warning, then please click yes. But if you don't, then never mind. We will talk about that in the next video. For now, what matters here is that you understand that basically a repository, or as we also call it, a repo, is the fundamental concept of Git. So right now in this Forkify folder, we created a local repository which will eventually contain all of our code here. So all this code, which is right now marked in this orange color. So you see that changed as soon as we initialized this Git repository. So that means that there is actually a very tight integration between Git and VS Code. And that is because really all software developers work with Git. So everyone needs these features, and therefore VS Code has this very tight integration. Now, right now, none of these files are already in our repository, but for now, we will actually not add them. So I will leave that for the next lecture, because in this one, all I wanted to do is to configure Git and also to open an account on GitHub next. And so let's actually go do that. So let's search for GitHub. And so then it's github.com. Now we need GitHub or any other service that is similar to GitHub in order to basically store our local repository in the cloud. So eventually, of course, we will have some code here in this repository. And then we will want to save that repository online. So for example, that we can switch between computers, or that we can make sure that our code never gets lost. And so for that, we need an account on some service like GitHub. And there's also GitLab or I think Git bucket or something like that. But GitHub is by far the most popular one. And so let's open up an account here in case you don't have one yet. Okay, and this is probably how GitHub will look like for you after you log in. But for now, that's not so important. Again, we will start working with it in the next lecture. For now, what I want to do here is to basically connect your local Git installation with your GitHub account. And so let's do some configuration here. So we type git. And by the way, as you see, Git is basically a command line interface from which we can use this software and really do all kinds of stuff. Now, there are also some graphical user interfaces for Git, which many people that don't like the command line prefer. But actually, in my opinion, I think that it's easier to use Git on the command line. All right. But anyway, what I want to do now here is git config and then the option of global. And so this will then work in all the repos you ever create on your computer. And then user.name. And then set this to your username that you just chose on GitHub. So for me, that would be like Jonas Schmettmann or something like that. So do this. So write your username and then hit enter, which I will not do. And then write the same thing again. So git config global user and this one email. And then here specify the email that you used on GitHub. And so with this, it will then become a lot easier to basically connect your local repositories with GitHub. Okay? And that's actually it for this setup video. In the next lecture, we will then actually start using Git. And after this 3-part intro to Git, so after this lecture and the next 2 ones, you will be able to start using Git in your own projects. And that's actually really important. So you really need to start using Git because you will use Git in every web development job that you will ever find. So every developer uses Git and also GitHub every single day.